to kick it off with some news. These are recent articles that came out in the last few months. And I liked starting off each of my different webinars with current events. I feel like current events are what we spend time talking around the dinner table, or what we spend talking with our friends when we're grabbing a drink or a meal, or even what you might be doing in your downtime. I know that a lot of us are still not together. I'm still in a virtual office. I'm actually in my parents' house at the moment due to some transition, and we're talking about change today. So everybody goes through it on a regular basis. But we're going to focus today on coaching your team on 3G principles. So I came to the Leadership Tribe webinar series in April of this year and talked about 3G, and I'm going to talk about what 3G is. And then, when we're going to take that and apply that to a coaching scenario for teams, I wanted to go back to the real reason why we started the conversation in the first place, which is around your people. So one of the things I wanted to do was talk about why employers are struggling with employees at the moment, and those conversations around return to office or a vaccination policy. I was actually at a dinner last night, and an email went out to a colleague of mine's company, and it said, look, by X date, everyone needs to be vaccinated. And the conversation has been very polarizing for a lot of employees for a number of reasons, because of personal decisions and personal viewpoints on the topic. And ultimately, it's driving this conversation in the market on the Great Resignation. So you're going to hear that topic, you're going to hear that trend. It's out there in the market, and they're saying, hey, there's employees who are looking at new opportunities. Policies are changing, and how are they responding? And are you, as an employer, responding? And one of the articles that came out from Gallup, and this was July 22nd, so not too long ago, about a month ago, and it says the Great Resignation is really the great discontent. And when it comes down to it, employees leave because they're not as happy as they could be in their current role. And there's a lot of conversation around the grass isn't always greener, and how do we encourage environments where employees can reconnect with their current position or their current environment. So I want to talk a little bit more about how we can do that today. And so I apologize if my voice ever sounds a little raspy. I'm fighting a cold, not COVID, thankfully. But while we're going through this, I want to review a few principles from my conversation in April. This is a quote that I used from David Ballard, who's the head of APA's Center for Organizational Excellence. So APA is the Association of Payroll Advisors. And he says, change is inevitable in organizations, and when it happens, leadership often underestimates the impact of those changes and what they have on employees. If they damage their relationship with employees, ratchet up stress levels, and create a climate of negativity and cynicism in the process, managers can wind up undermining the very change efforts they're trying to promote. Now, I think this was related directly to changes that the organization was presenting. But I think a lot of the changes that are occurring in our environment today are external pressures that you as a leader may not have control over. So I want to talk about how can we control the narrative, even if we can't control the change. How can you set up your team for success during these times of change is the topic of what we're discussing. And I want to start with you. So this was the conversation that we had in April of how helping others by helping yourself should be flipped, and let's help ourselves in order to help others. So now we're going to go back to helping others, and we're going to start with a review of those principles. So let's talk about 3Gs for leadership through change. So this can apply to anyone. So even if you're not leading a team today and you're a team member and you're not familiar with these principles, we're going to discuss them. So as we review what these principles are, let's remember what grit is. So grit is passion and perseverance for a long-term goal. It's you caring so much about that purpose that it organizes and gives meaning to almost everything you do. So you never quit on the goal. So the goal could be your organizational goal, it could be your personal goal in your role at work, or it could be something that drives you outside of work, like your family. And you know that you have to perform well at work to be able to give your family what they need. So the grit is that passion and perseverance for that long-term goal, that point out there that you're trying to achieve. Growth mindset is your own worldview or philosophy of life that believes that your talents can be developed and that you can always learn more strategies and achieve more with hard work and input from others. So it's the thought process that when presented with a problem, it's an opportunity and not something that's going to deter you or push you backwards. Any challenge you can view in a positive or a negative manner. And the growth mindset says every challenge is an opportunity, and it's a commitment to not shy away from that challenge. The third piece of the 3Gs is giving. So giving is a concept that life is about the people around us, and that by giving to them, you get in return. That together we're better, and that new information will always give new ideas. So that means when we're surrounding ourselves with others and we care about the collective, together we're better. And I think we learned a lot about that during the last, few months or year and a half during the COVID pandemic, where we realized as we came together and cared about each other, we made progress together. So if we combine all of these into a single statement, the grittiest people see their goals deeply connected to the world beyond themselves, and they want to do something about it. So again, the grittiest people see their goals deeply connected to the world beyond themselves, and they want to do something about it. So let's talk back to some of the news articles that we discussed, and let's talk about why people quit. So 4 things you think before you quit. I'm bored. I don't like my job. I'm soul sucked. I feel like every day I don't have anything that contributes anything. I'm not learning anything. The effort isn't worth it. I work so hard and I feel like I don't make an impact. This isn't important to me. I don't even like it. What does it matter what I do today? Or I can't do this, so I might as well give up. And these are common themes that you may have in your mind, or some of the things that you may hear from employees that are like, I don't like this job anymore. I don't like this company anymore. I don't like what I'm doing. I need to find something different. So what I want to do is reshape the conversation based off of these, common themes, and how we can re-engage our employees using the 3G principles. So the first thing I want to touch on is a situational leadership model created by Hersey Blanchard. So this might be something that you've seen in leadership training prior to this conversation, or something you may have ran into during your business school days. At some point, you may have run into this model, but you might also be new to it. So the situational leadership model was created in 1969. It's been around for a while, but I like the principles because it's based off the fact that, there's no one way to coach or manage an employee, that every situation is different. And the question is, what is the best leadership style in that moment? Because it depends on where the employee or associate is in their cycle in that role, if that makes sense. So what we're trying to engage with on this is, if I have an associate who's coming to me and they're saying, I'm unhappy today, or there's a vibe in your team that's like, ooh, I don't think we're all on the same page. We're not all driving to the same goal. There's a couple different things that we can do. So I want to talk first about the individual. So when we're looking at this model, each employee can be in a different box. You have S1, S2, S3, and S4. S1 is like a newer employee, right? Someone who just joined. And in that specific area, it's a high directive behavior, which means what to do, how to do it, where it needs to be done, and when it needs to be completed. In an S1, we're very directive. Hey, new hire, this needs to be done. This is how we do it. Here's where you can find the information. Let me know if you have any questions. I need this by Friday. So that's that early on relationship. With any employee who's new in a role, there's going to be some situation where you have to be higher directive, no matter how experienced they are with the subject matter. It's not as a supportive model where it's more about relationship, to the point where it's like you're actively listening to what they're proposing and you're coaching them. That's the next phase, S2, right? So it's still some directive behavior, but it's a supportive model. So what we're seeing is, this is an employee that has started to understand where this information is, but maybe we're doing a little bit more mentoring in our conversation, and we're saying, yep, I hear what you're saying. I hear the questions that you have. Here's where you can go find that information. when do you think you can have it by? So it's a little bit more directive, but you're still being very supportive to create that autonomy, right? The supporting model in S3 is a high supportive behavior, less directive, right? So we're in a different model, right? We have the new employee where we were very directive and we said, here's what we need by this point. This is what I need you to do. This is someone who doesn't have the competencies yet in the role. Then you have another person who has high competency, but you still need to tell them where they need to go. Now we're in a supporting role where that employee is trying to get comfortable with knowing that they can do it on their own and they don't need you. But sometimes they need to come back and get reinforcement. So they're coming to you, they're saying, I have this issue, I have this question, and you're asking, okay, let's talk this through. I hear you saying this, I hear you saying that, I hear you thinking that you need to do this. Is that correct? Oh, great. Okay. Yep, that's what I need. Is there anything I can do to help you to achieve that? Yes, here's what I need. Great, off you go. So the final piece is the delegating piece, where really you have a high performer who understands their role, they know where they need to go to get it done, and you can just kind of touch base every now and then and say, hey, anything you need? Is there anything that you're looking for? How's things going? Everything seems to go well. Great, perfect. So that's the model. I'll pause to see if anybody has any questions on the model so far. If you do, you can pop it in the chat. Awesome. So what I want to do at this point is introduce how we do coaching in these various scenarios with grit, growth mindset, and giving in mind. So this is a model in a vacuum, right? This means like everything is great and there's no change occurring and there's nobody impacting how my employee works. They literally just have their goals and they have the resources they need to get it done. But we know that in the real world, there's constant challenges and changes that happen, and there's no straight line. We have little deviations where we have to manage different pieces in the day-to-day and roll with the changes that come. So as a leader, what can you do to coach using the 3Gs? So I want to start first with connecting to their grit. If you have an employee who is just struggling to continue to move forward, that they feel beat up, that might be something they're saying, like, oh, I'm just feeling really beat up. I just feel like, what I'm doing doesn't make a difference, or, there's a couple different statements that you can connect with to say, okay, you say you don't really enjoy what you're doing right now. What did you enjoy about your role this week? Can you tell me one or two things that you enjoyed? The goal here with these questions is that they're open-ended, to start a conversation with your employee. Obviously, they have things that they need to meet as basic requirements of the role. But what we're trying to do is build a relationship of support so that in this role, you can connect them back to their purpose. So what is it you do enjoy about the role? What is the one thing that really excites you and gets you up in the morning? How can I help you stay connected between those two pieces? So if the role itself isn't what's driving them, and if there isn't things in their role every day, then let's go wider and ask them, what's the thing that excites you every day and gets you up in the morning? And then how can you connect their role and how they get driven every day together? So how can you connect the dots for them and say, okay, I'm really driven because I have a 3-year-old at home and he's really, the most important thing in my life. And every day I go home and I want him to understand that, we can continue to move forward and persevere no matter what. So you connect those things and say, okay, well, at work, I understand that you're having a really tough time in this project and that there's a few people that have been challenging in this new rollout. I understand that you're feeling beat up about these conversations. So how can we, persevere in these scenarios and continue to feel like you're demonstrating to your son or daughter that, every day we get up and we keep going. And I know that's a very general example, but you'll find ways to connect. What did they enjoy about their role? Remember, that's important. So what did they enjoy that that they can drive them so they can do more of that to keep them happy at work? And what is the one thing that really excites them about every morning? And then how can you connect what makes them feel good, what they do well, and what excites them so that they have that drive to continue to reconnect in the role. We also want to increase their confidence, and that's kind of blending in from that last piece that we just discussed and talking about the growth mindset of how did you use your strengths today? So it's one thing, what did you enjoy? Like, I could really enjoy drawing and be really terrible at it. But if I enjoy it, I'll keep doing it because I enjoy doing it. Like maybe you really like crayons and that's how you de-stress or you doodle. You may not be great at it, but you enjoy it. But how do you use your strengths every day? Strengths are things that you enjoy and you're good at and that you can contribute to the team. So your strength may be that you really enjoy facilitating team meetings and that it really gets you going to be able to get in front of the group and engage people and feel like you're bringing everyone into the common conversation. So you can ask the question open-endedly, how did you use your strengths today, this week? Didn't you have opportunities across the week to be able to use that strength? How can we present more opportunities for you to use that strength? What's one area that you believe you could be even better in? So if you're really good at one thing, how can we make you even better at that? And how can I support you in that area? Are there trainings or sessions that you think will be of value that I can provide to help you increase confidence and shift the mindset? So remember, growth mindset means every day when we're challenged with an issue, we're looking at it and saying, this is an opportunity for growth. And the last piece of this is connecting the purpose. So giving back. So reflecting on the team goal, what do you believe our purpose is? I'm going to talk about in a few minutes how we can create that. But when we're reflecting on the team goal, what do you believe our purpose is? Ask them to repeat what our goal is and make sure that we're synced on what that goal is. And how does your work contribute to the team goal? So let's go back. What did you enjoy about this week? How did you use your strengths? And how does your work contribute to the team goal? I think those are things where it brings in the overall value of you have grit, you have a growth mindset, there are positives in what you're doing, and it matters to the team. But it's important for your team member to be the person that actually contributes the answers to these questions, which is why I asked you to use those open-ended questions in the first place versus answering for them or using a closed question. And when I say closed question, I mean, your strength is facilitating team meetings, right? You had a chance to do that this week, right? When you ask a question like that, one, you answered for them. So you already answered that that's their strength. They didn't get to tell you that themselves. And that question gave them a yes or no opportunity versus giving them a chance to open up, give you information for you to then engage even further. You can't make the assumption that you already know the answer to the question in these coaching scenarios. It's a little bit different than when we're asking a question in a sales process or when we're working with a client. We usually don't ask questions that we don't know the answer to in some scenarios. But in this one, we're opening it up so that we can find ways to engage with our employees on another level to really, truly understand what's driving them and how we can help them feel engaged at work. So how can I help you feel supported by the team or support your goal to give even more? So remember, we're connecting to their grit, we're connecting to their growth mindset, and we're connecting to the purpose, the greater purpose, and their purpose, so that they feel like what they're doing every day matters. Ultimately, that's what every person wants, that when they come to work, they feel like what they do matters. And so if we're having these types of conversations, one, you're showing your employee that you actually care to have the conversation, but two, you're now trying to connect with them on an individual level. So as we look at this as a we is greater than me, and I know I mentioned this on our last scenario or our last webinar, every opportunity you have to give to the collective versus just yourself creates a stronger community. And it gives you the opportunity to, share the love. I know I use love loosely, but that's actually a really common term in a lot of the leadership books that are coming out in the last few years. That it's just about sharing care, overall care and engagement and genuine interest in others that drives better team dynamics and better relationships between employers and employees. So when I look at this piece regarding the team overall, when we're creating 3G team dynamics, I want to start with creating a team identity. Your team has to have something to connect with. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. I've worked with a number of different product teams who like to create a team name or a team, logo or a team identity that, they can display for the rest of the environment that they're in. So whether that's an office or in a virtual scenario, that's what they connect with. So if it's WebEx Teams, what's our team identity? It's not just, if it's my team, not Team Wessels Guzman, it's a team that my collective team puts together. So if we all love golf, it's like the team of the golf lovers, and that's something that we all connect with and have pride. Or it's our region, or it's just what we hope to achieve, like, the team, team grit, whatever that team identifies that they think is what their identity is and what makes them proud to be a group and a collective. Let them design that, create the space to do that. The next piece is connect the dots and develop the focus. So at the beginning of any fiscal year, whatever that fiscal year is for you, or maybe it's a sprint, whatever it is, whether, those time markers that cut up the months and days and weeks of where you guys say this is a milestone. At the beginning of that milestone, determine the vision for that period. What is that vision for that specific period of time? And then set it, connect it to the team identity, and then create opportunities for you to connect individual goals to that overall vision for that time period. So for this milestone, for the next 6 months, our vision is to deliver this. And to deliver this, we need to do A, B, C, D, E. And team member, Joe, you're responsible for A and B. How do we connect that back to our overall vision? And you need to consistently remind your team of that every time you come together. I'm a firm believer of team check-ins. I appreciate teams that have high performers that don't need team interaction to do their job. But when you connect people, they have a drive to stay connected to each other when they have that mutual identity and mutual focus, and they're less likely to leave your organization because they don't want to leave the community they're built. That's just human nature. Human nature says, let's stick together. And even those lone wolves do have things that they want to connect to make them feel like they're part of a larger community. So rallying the team is a huge component of this overall 3G team dynamic. So the one thing I want to introduce is recognizing the grit. Where did we persevere this week? So when you have that team check-in, whether it's weekly, monthly is a little long, but maybe it's bi-weekly, you take a moment and say, where do we persevere this period of time? Who has a sample of where we persevered? And have somebody tell a story. Stories are powerful. Hey, I thought that Artie really persevered when we did X, and I'm really proud of her. So, I'm recognizing her grit. Thanks, Artie, for doing that. Or a growth moment, what was our lesson that we learned? Well, I really had a tough time this week because I presented this new project to team whatever, and they really didn't buy in. And, I walked away from that call feeling really disappointed. And so I went back to the drawing board and I came up with some ideas, and I went back and they really liked my new idea. So I felt like that was a really, huge growth moment because I took a second and I rallied and I came back and I said, here's a new idea. So those stories, bring those to the team, and having people share those opportunities. One, it connects us because we're being vulnerable and we're creating a safe space. But two, we're recognizing where we bounce back and where we grow and where we recognize that we can continue to persevere on our overall goal. And finally, connect it back. Like I mentioned, I just said collective goal. If we update on the progress during those check-in points, we then have the opportunity to show the incremental updates that we're making every time we come together so that people can see the progress. We're creating it, we're rallying around it, and ultimately we can reduce the friction. Are there any pinch points towards our goal this week? There may be team members who don't get along on your team, and you can have a one-off conversation with them. And that's where you see, okay, well, we're not able to progress this because Krista and Joe are just not driving, and I can identify that in that team meeting. So I walk away from that team checkpoint and I say, hey guys, this is a pinch point. And I recognize that you guys have different viewpoints on how we want to address this. So how can we get together and make this happen? As a leader, that's your job, right? You're supposed to identify those pinch points, even when the team doesn't identify it, and find a way to move forward. So if we have a team identity, we have a safe space, we're connecting the dots for them and helping them to develop the focus on the vision. We're rallying them around that. We're recognizing each other, and we're connecting back to the purpose every time. We should be able to move past any change scenario and get moving, even if it's small incremental steps every time. I know that it's hard if you've never done it before, and nothing is ever easy that's worth it, right? So I always like to end every conversation that I have on why an enterprise coach. So this is an opportunity for you to engage with someone who's external to your organization to say, hey, I just need some coaching here and there on how I'm approaching the 3G principles with my team. I've done these scenarios. How can you, provide some feedback for me on how I can approach this? Or sometimes we just need a sounding board, and that's a coach. A coach is a sounding board. They're not going to tell you how to do it. They may remind you of some of the different tools that you have in your disposal, but ultimately they're just helping you refocus on the goal that you have. They're a feedback loop. They're giving you structure to make sure you stay focused. And ultimately, they're helping you achieve big picture success. Today's scenario and conversation's a little bit shorter today because I wanted to provide some opportunities for questions and answers, and just to discuss if you have any questions around some of the principles that we proposed today. So I'm going to just remind you that a lot of what we discussed today was based off of these books that I've read. I do highly encourage you to take a look. These were the same books that I used for our focus on our last conversation about focusing on yourself first and making sure that you are living by these principles of grit, giving, and ultimately growth mindset. So as you look at this, make sure that you're building your own foundation in the 3G principles, and then you can take that to your team.